hard for us to have any kind of relationship. Mental illness is a bitch, and it's hard for everyone around to deal with and manage. I don't want to paint this picture that Anthony and I had this super close relationship, and this is a video that, feel sorry for me, feel sorry for us. That's not the case. I'm looking at this from a perspective of law enforcement's investigation and the way they handled this case contributed to pain and torment experienced by my mother and my sister. I had conversations with two members of the department, and I recorded both of those conversations. So I want to spend time breaking some of that down. I want you guys to hear it. I want to let you digest it, give me feedback. And if you are in law enforcement, or if you are in law, and anything I say is off base or wrong, please comment. Let me know. Hold me accountable. If you don't, then I'm just going to continue to spew bullshit and not know any better. So please hold me accountable there. Now, what I want to do first is I want to kind of break down the initial missing person report, how that was handled, kind of give you the series of events and the timeline leading up to Anthony's disappearance. Our brother was bipolar schizophrenic, and he had some severe injuries that he was recovering from an incident back in November. Let's go back to that. So he's found butt naked in a dumpster, covered head to toe in lacerations and hematomas. He was in very bad shape. He was John Doe'd into the hospital until they were able to confirm his identification. He's released, and he tries to continue his journey down to Florida. That's where he was trying to go to. So he originally left Ohio on his bike. It was like a street legal dirt bike, trying to get down to Florida to escape the Ohio winters. His bike breaks down in Macon. He meets this guy, I think at a homeless shelter, and this guy offers him a room. It's on like the lower level of the residence. The last text or any communication we get from Anthony is 12:28, around 12:30. He sends a text to our mom. Apparently, per Mike, the homeowner, he takes Anthony to the store later that night to get some burritos and some other essentials. And then that Friday, he is supposed to take Anthony to the DMV to get everything done for his bike so he can continue his journey on. Mike goes down to Anthony's room, and it's apparently ajar. Anthony's bikes are in there, and he's nowhere to be found. Now, Anthony would have never left his bikes unattended, and definitely not in a room that's open. Mike thinks it's weird, doesn't see Anthony in there, comes back later in the day, and everything's still the same. There was a burrito in the microwave that Anthony apparently had started to cook before he had vanished. Comes back later in that day. This is the 29th. Anthony's still gone. So Mike, the homeowner, calls and files the initial report. The next day, one of the deputies who took the initial report calls and speaks to our mother. She shares information that he has mental health issues, bipolar schizophrenic, shares information about the November incident, that he's in very bad physical shape, that he needs to be found immediately, that his health and his life is dependent on it. What you are about to hear is a little bit of our conversation about any SOPs they have in place, and also their criteria for a normal risk missing person versus a high risk missing person.
They go on known like a man list or something like that. You have to be schizophrenic, dementia, schizophrenia, age, depending on your health, because they got criteria, because they go through GBI.
What you just heard there is the lead investigator saying that they have different criteria for a normal missing person versus high risk. If you paid attention, you probably heard that some of the criteria for a high-risk missing person included age, health, dementia, schizophrenia was one of the criteria he threw out there. He said manic list or Madden list, something along those lines. But basically, a high-risk missing person.
Missing person, they have procedure. Okay. When a deputy missing person is he or she is at risk. And normally, it's called suicide us, and we access the information, and we do our preliminary. Whatever we do, we think foul play, we do phone pings and all that.
Was he listed? Was he listed at risk with his current physical condition and then mental health issues?
Well, it wasn't. Only thing that it told us was he has So, yeah.
So was the initial missing?
I thought she told me renal failure. That's it.
Okay, so was it treated as a high risk missing person or just a normal missing person report?
Because how she explained it is a normal missing person because based on the information she received that he went missing 3 or 45 minutes dollars.
He also goes on to say that the only information they had is that he had renal failure, that he didn't get the information that they had that he was bipolar schizophrenic. Maybe he did. But the media releases that say Bibb County Sheriff's Department is asking for help, it's a media release prepared by the Sheriff's Department, and if I'm wrong there, correct me, but it highlights that our brother's schizophrenic, that he suffers from mental illness, that he is in bad physical shape. I'm going to go back a little bit earlier into this conversation.
You got to understand, in the history he had paranoia, schizophrenia, and he was found a month or 3 weeks before he missed it. He was found in a dumpster butt naked and in a hospital overdose on drugs. So he has a history of overdose and paranoia and being naked in a container. So that's consistent with him walking up paranoid roof, trying to probably make somebody roof up, climb the roof, try to see what's in there and got stuck.
Right. And you got to understand that's all speculation. That's all speculation until interviews and investigative procedures are actually completed, right? I mean, you and I both know that we can sit here and assume that, right?
But based on preliminary, he wasn't taking up that dumping roof. Based on that, that.
You can hear that he refers back to the November incident that I mentioned earlier involving Anthony. This happened in the past. He was found in a chimney, so it's consistent with what he did back in November. That's what happened. It sounds to me like they are operating on past behavior, which I get that. I understand that to an extent. But when you have one incident that you're working on and you say it's consistent with him going up there, being paranoid, jumping down, getting stuck and dying, that's a leap there. That's a reach. Now that very well could have happened. But you sit here and you say you didn't even interview neighbors.
Were any of the nearby neighbors interviewed just to see if maybe they saw something like, yeah, we saw some motherfucker drag someone up there and dump them down the chimney? Like, were any of the neighbors interviewed? Because if you understand, you say you did investigation before, you did crime scene. If you tell somebody on the roof or the chimney, they gonna hit first. They ain't gonna hit first, they gonna hit first. His body was found feet first, head to the top.
Or, I mean, it also depends on how they dumped them, right? I mean, they could dump them feet first and make it look like you jumped in there.
But you understand, if you are still alive, your body, you're going to dump them head first so you can really say, get your, it's like resistant.
Right.
First thing you do, like, dump them in the head first.
Right. Or
it's like, get your butt in there.
Right. Yeah, totally. And there's so many different ways, and we have so many questions, and he could have been drugged and dumped in their feet first. There's all, you setting the stage too, right? I mean, they can set the whole stage. We don't know who's involved there.
But I'm saying, I'm trying to get that. If he said he was taking up to the roof and dumped, I walk the roof.
Yeah.
Sir, I'm gonna slip and fail. If I try to drag him up there, I'm gonna fall. I'm gonna break my neck.
Right.
I'm gonna get his butt back. I went up there just to see. How can it be possible for somebody to walk the roof? Sir, I get five of them to help me up there.
Yeah.
You know, in the world that two people can go, even two people can drag a body up there. So that's why you need to come to me and walk the roof yourself. You don't see what I'm talking about.
Yeah. No,
I literally walk the roof. I can testify to say I walk the roof.
Yeah.
Ain't no in the world possible that
Yeah.
nobody can carry that man up. Or carry anybody. Probably say he's 160, 180 pounds on that roof.
Yeah.
I'm saying, because you'll slip, because the roof is slippery and cold.
Right.
Slip. So I'm going to slip.
You didn't even interview neighbors because in your mind, and you also acknowledge that you don't know what happened.
Right.
You're acknowledging that, and you're also acknowledging that you did not interview any neighbors to see if someone was up on the roof. Maybe someone saw somebody drag someone up on the roof. That could have happened. Who knows? We won't know now. Speculation will only get you so far, but you also need to do a little bit more effort. You can't just stop at, it was hard for me to get on the roof. It was hard for me to walk the roof. It's impossible for anybody else to do this. This is the only thing that could have happened. It could have happened. That could have happened. But again, you don't know unless you do a full investigation. I believe that it was mishandled, right? Our brother was bipolar schizophrenic. We reported that to the deputies. They had that knowledge. You hear the investigator refer back to that incident, leaning on that to back up his assumption of what happened. That it's consistent with him going out there, being paranoid, jumping down, getting stuck. Again, could have happened, could have not happened. We don't know. A lot of unanswered questions there. Take it for what it is. Let's move on, and let's kind of digest and talk about their response to the scene. The response to the scene, in general, and again, I'm gonna be leaning on my past law enforcement experience. In general, when you respond to a scene that has a dead person, what could be a homicide or let's just say natural causes, one of the first things you do is secure the scene. The residence, the area, wherever you're at, it is secure. That's one of the first things you do.
Can you kind of walk me through quickly as far as securing the scene, what was done?
No, sir, I wasn't there.
Got it. Do you know if the scene was secured when they found the body?
Again, I was not there, sir.
Got it. Have you read the case?
Have I read the case? No, but I've been briefed by the investigators, yes.
Okay, so do you know if there was any kind of chain of custody where the scene was secured at the time?
Oh, I feel sure there was, sir, but again, I was not present. I don't have access to those records right now.
That's the major. Again, he's higher up in the food chain, so I get that he's not going to know every single detail about every single case. But when there is something that has kind of garnished the media attention of our brother being found in a chimney after being missing for weeks, you would think that you want to cover everything because there's probably going to be questions, right? How did this missing man end up in the chimney of the home he was staying in? Natural causes, unknown causes, I guess, but whatever. Going back into this, you hear him say that he doesn't know if the scene was secured, any of those things, because he wasn't there. And I get that. He might not have been working that night. He's the major in charge. He gets a lot of briefings. But also, I guess just in my past experience, my supervisors, they always read every single case from the night prior to understand what happened and debrief the next shift. So the next shift knows what happened before they start. Maybe they don't do that here. Procedures and policies are different across the board, but again, usually the response to a scene like this is pretty standard. And outside of preservation of life, it usually starts with securing the scene.
Investigator Moss, so he would be the best contact then to understand what actually happened on scene?
Yeah, that's correct. He was there.
Okay, so he was there on scene, so he'll be able to answer the questions as far as chain of custody, what was done with the evidence, if there was a search warrant executed, if the scene was secure, all of that. Basic preliminary investigation steps and response to a death investigation.
To some extent, he's just the investigator, and you're asking questions, and I'm not even sure where this is going. Right now, we've got a missing person who was found stuck in a chimney.
Exactly. We have a missing person that was found stuck in a chimney. So naturally, there's a lot of questions. That's where I'm going with this, is I have some general basic questions from a law enforcement perspective that I'm curious about. Securing the scene is one of them. So he says Investigator Moss is the best person to talk to because he was there. But to a certain extent, because he's just the investigator, I would think, and I would go out on a limb to say, that as the investigator, you should know what was done to the full extent. So if you get to the scene, you need to know everything that happened up to deputies calling you there, right? You should know everything before you take anything forward.
Was the scene secured?
What you mean secure?
So was the scene secured and treated as a crime scene?
As the lead investigator of a death investigation or a homicide, how do you not know what I mean when I ask you, was the scene secured? That part, that piece right there, I was hesitant before, but that right there pretty much, any faith I had for them conducting a thorough investigation was thrown out the window. Gone after that.
Was the scene secured and treated like a crime scene? There's a log for like who entered, who exited, chain of custody.
No, there wasn't.
Understood. Was there a search warrant executed on the residence after his body was located?
No, sir.
Okay. Is there any reason why?
There was no need for a search warrant at the time because they were almost gone.
Okay. So you didn't feel the need to execute a search warrant on the residence?
No.
The scene wasn't secure. There was no chain of custody. No scene like that, right? You previously heard the major say, I can assure you that everything was followed, that all that was done. But he said, again, he wasn't there. So he did say he wasn't there, so he doesn't know. But he also told my brother's father the night he was found that it would be treated as a homicide investigation. I'm struggling to wrap my head around a homicide investigation that doesn't include securing the scene right from the start, establishing a log of who's going in, who's coming out, chain of custody of all the evidence collected, all of that. How do you not do that while treating this as a homicide investigation? Well, I'll tell you, you didn't treat it as a homicide investigation, so none of that was done. Continuing on with this piece here about the search warrant. You also heard him say there was no need to do a search warrant because the homeowner was being cooperative. However, they didn't search anywhere outside of the initial chimney area. Did you guys go in his room where he was staying and search his room?
No, I ain't going in the room.
Okay. So you guys didn't go in the room where he was staying at? Okay, so basically, as far as the response, you guys just got the body out of the chimney, and then you talked to Mike, and then you left the scene. Okay. I have a lot of questions that I would have liked to have asked that homeowner if I was on scene responding there as the investigator, but I'm not. It's my past life. All I can do is this now. Let's go back to the part, a little piece of the conversation with the major, where we're chatting about the search warrant, if the search warrant was executed, the response to the scene, and if the homeowner was brought in for questioning.